Well. Good afternoon, West Ham fans. Happy Monday. Now, are Ben Johnson's talks progressing with the club? And a very good Monday to you. Hope your day is going well, although it is very wet and gloomy in Hornchurch. But what is not gloomy is the transfer rumours. They are rolling like a river. And we'll be doing the Russie rumour rating for the Hammers headlines later on today, so keep an eye out for that. But I want to talk about Ben Johnson. Obviously, last week, the retained list was published. And, got a bit of fluff there. The retained list was published with people like Victor Ogbonna, Angelo Ogbonna, outside of mind, forgot about him now. Angelo Ogbonna, Joseph Anang being released, a number of academy players, some of the scholars as well in terms of who's been released, who's been kept. And then as part of the list, there was two sort of slightly stranger entries. Ben Johnson, in brackets, offer made or offer contract or something, and Divine Bomber, offer made, same thing. So, and the club made a point on their sort of announcement the day before to say that they were still very much in talks with Ben Johnson and Divine about new deals. Obviously, we know the saga of Ben Johnson's been going on for some time, really. It was over 2 years ago because because of a lack of agreement, we actually activated the 2-year extension 2 years ago for Ben Johnson. If you remember, there was almost like around that time it was Johnson versus Ngakia, wasn't it? And the club let Ngakia go in a hope of keeping Johnson sweet. And obviously, Ngakia hasn't really pulled up any trees at all since leaving. So it's probably the right decision. But according to 𝙍𝙀𝙋𝙊𝙍𝙏, and actually before then, let's just go a bit sort of in the timeline. And then there's been another contract discussions, most notably, obviously, last season, and then a decision by Ben that maybe, or by Ben and by Ben's representatives, that the club weren't offering what they wanted in terms of financial packaging. They saw his role in the club as more than what West Ham saw. And by West Ham, I mean probably David Moyes, in all honesty, because he would have been very much involved in those negotiations with those contracts. Now he's gone, obviously, we know, and Julien's in, and Tim is in charge of recruitment contracts and things like that. There has been a new wave of talks, by all accounts, headed up by Tim. And according to, as I said, 𝙍𝙀 employee, he said last week, was it this week? I can't remember. All bleed into one. That he believes that West Ham are becoming more optimistic that a deal for a new contract with Ben can be reached. The club have held many rounds of talks with him and Divine over extending their contracts, although to date it's been unsuccessful. Apparently Crystal Palace are interested in Ben Johnson, Rangers, Everton. We know at Sunderland we're interested in Barmer, maybe taking on another ex-academy players. They have Alese and Pierre Aguirre as well. But in terms of Ben, he said that the club are now becoming more hopeful that deals may be reached for both players as talks continue over the coming days. He was quoted on his Patreon podcast saying, "The club appear more optimistic about Ben Johnson and Divine staying now than they have done in previous weeks. Talks will continue. We know with Palace and Sunderland, especially trying to persuade the players respectively to sign for them. But they are more optimistic than they have been for a while." Ben Johnson's played over 100 times for West Ham. 109 games he's played for West Ham. 70 starts, 39 off the bench, and 2 goals. Obviously, scored that great goals. Aston Villa, we did the dance. Obviously, what Ben brings is an academy player. I mean, he was born in the 2000s, and has moved his way all the way from the academy all up into, I would say, a established first team squad player. That's I think when you've made over 50 appearances, you're established for a club, and he has done. Granted, I think his best season was a 21-22 season, where he played 28 games, six and six off the bench, so 34 appearances. Last year, he made 22 appearances, 7 starts and 15 off the bench. And that obviously, the 21-22 season was he played a lot. 21, he played 21 starts, 8 sub appearances, and then last year very much 7 and 15. So he sort of averages around, a fair enough amount, each year rather. But I think, and I've said this before, and people will may disagree, and you're more than welcome to in the comments below. Please let me know your thoughts. But it's crazy letting him go. It'd be crazy to let him go. I really believe it would be mental because I said before, you look at his role as a squad player, and that's with the West Ham eyes on, rather than necessarily Ben's eyes. Because I think if Ben ever had aspirations of playing, international football or stuff like that, you need a position to nail down. Yes, it's useful being a utility player, and you might get picked up for squads as a utility player, but you're never going to get picked initially. You look at his role at West Ham. He's second choice right back. He's third choice left back now. He has played right back for back three, right side of back three. He played that for the academy for many years as well. He can play centre half. He's played CDM this year, and I think arguably looks more happy in that role than any others. Originally, he was a CDM. I remember talking to Mark Phillips about him, because he had it was like a man in the match performance, wasn't it, at CDM last year? And he said he originally was a midfielder, and he converted into a right back. So apparently, it's Mark Phillips' fault. But congratulations to them. Obviously, they're doing the 3 Peaks challenge yesterday. He's played right wing. He's played left wing. He's played central midfield as well as CDM. So he's probably played about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 positions. And you need that with a squad. You need to be adaptable. Yes, you've got specialists. You've got people that's their role and that's all they do. But having that squad player within a squad, within a match day squad, who can come on and do a job in each position. Not saying he's the best player in that. I said he's third choice, second choice. I think we are looking at the fullback area as an area we're looking at improving. We know Vlad's not getting younger. Emerson's not getting younger as well. I mean, he's knocking on 30 now, isn't he? So, having that continuity in terms of Ben Johnson in the squad, I think would be really important. Also, from a quota perspective, he is both homegrown and academy. So you can see why other clubs like Crystal Palace and stuff like that are interested in him because of what he brings as a homegrown player, particularly being a free transfer. He would be out of tribunal as well, I believe. Barmer's a bit of a different thing. He'd still be in tribunal in terms of getting some money for him. But for Ben, he'd be out because I think he's over the age of 21. I think it's the cut-off point, I believe. Now, obviously, next year there's going to be less games as well. I mean, that's a really important point. There's going to be less opportunity for him to play, but there is a new head coach there, a head coach who he hasn't been working with for the last 4 years, and so there's a opportunity there to really maybe establish himself there. And I think it'll be crazy for the club to let him go. I really do. And if the difference is like, I don't know, 50 grand to 60 grand, I know it sounds ridiculous, but 10 grand up isn't a huge leap for someone like West Ham, particularly with the wages saved with the likes of Abona going, Joseph going, potentially Ben Rama going, looking at moving the players out like Sai Ben Rama, who Anton spoke about yesterday, for maybe doing something clever with Jake O'Brien at Lyon. I just don't understand. The only thing I could think of is maybe a reluctance for Ben to get in to agree, particularly when he doesn't know his role at the club. And at his age, he needs to be playing first team football regularly. He needs to be playing it regularly from his perspective. Is he going to get regular football at Crystal Palace? I don't necessarily think I don't think he would necessarily start for Crystal Palace. So surely it'd make more sense just to stay at West Ham, particularly if they're offering say a decent wage, and carry on regardless, so to speak. I know Rangers were interested in him. Likely he probably would have got first team football at Rangers, but we know Everton as well been interested in him. They're looking at replacement for Seamus Coleman. And they were looking at buying him last summer, wasn't it? I think, if I remember correctly, and trying to get him quite cheap because of being in his last year of his contract. But I remember when we spoke about Ben in the live stream, there were some really interesting people who had different opinions of him. Maybe it's a similar situation to how I'm looking at it. How I looked at like Flynn Downs. Flynn Downs was like, we did a whole show about him last week. Flynn is a player who is a good player. Maybe he's hit his ceiling, maybe not. I don't know. In terms of that sort of upper echelons of the Championship, maybe not good enough to get into the Premier League, sort of stuck in that no man's land. A bit like Burnley were. They were too good for the Championship, but they weren't good enough for the Premier League. And maybe that's where, because Flynn is a West Ham supporter, he's a bit more. It gets like, as I said, like on FIFA or whatever it called EA FC. They have like an attribute card. You get more. It's like same with academy players. We think all academy players, we should be bleeding a lot more into the first team. And there was a point where I think we wanted that to happen, but I don't think the academy players were good enough. But we thought they were because they were playing against the same peers rather than necessarily playing against men in terms of the old reserve leagues and stuff like that. So, and I think maybe that might be the case for me with Ben. But I just think he's a very, very, very useful player in a squad which we are bereft of options. We want someone, he's the type of guy who is like the last piece of the puzzle, and he can fit in anywhere you want to put that puzzle in, which is great for the club, but I don't think he's good for his personal development. So they're sort of the head and heart type. But let me know what you think in the comments. Would you offer Ben Johnson a contract? Simple yes or no, and your reasonings behind that. Anyway, as I said, Hammer's headlines later on. We'll be doing the Rusty Rumour Roundup, the original Rumour Roundup, the latest news, the latest rumours, updates on some of the players we've been linked with, and also I give you the current running total of players who've been linked with. Make sure you check that out. Take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith, and come on, you bloody Irons.